of the Spotfire API and a brief update on that for those of you that are not familiar with the API or want to know what's new in it. And then I'm going to move on to showing conditional alerting using Tibco Spotfire automation services. So Spotfire is extensible. I'm sure some of you have already used the Spotfire API to great effect, but we're very proud of this aspect of the product. We can extend every part of it. So we've got server APIs, we've got APIs that can be used in the web player with mashups and IronPython. We've got automation services, APIs and statistic services, and everything can be pushed into the client. We've got all sorts of extensions for that too. So let me just highlight a couple of examples of those APIs for those that are not familiar. So we have a Spotfire.net automation API which automates multiple tasks in Spotfire. We can create and configure visualizations, automate data loading, combine multiple user actions into one click, do all sorts of things that you can do in the Spotfire API and roll them up into scripted actions. So the API is available from IronPython. We can also write a number of .NET extensions, which I'll talk about in a minute. And the API reference is always available online. You can actually just Google that, and if you're interested, you can just browse that API documentation. So it's really open and accessible. We also have the ability to deploy custom extensions into the platform, and they appear as just exactly the same way as out-of-the-box functionality. In fact, the tool for alerting that I'm about to show you appears in the Tools menu alongside all the other existing tools we've got inside Spotfire, and it's indistinguishable from out-of-the-box functionality. We've got some examples with the SDK that you can download, and again, you can Google all this. And we've got a lot of information now on the Tibco community for extending Spotfire. So go and have a look there and see what you can find if you're interested. There is the most significant new API extension is we've recently with Spotfire 7.7 released the custom panel. And that's a really nice extension point for Spotfire because we can combine a web UI and within all the Spotfire clients, so it will work in Spotfire Analyst as well as Spotfire Web, and it enables bidirectional client-server communication and user interface. So you can really create custom UIs and custom functionality really easily within Spotfire using that whole model and architecture that we've designed for that. There's an article on the Tibco community that you can go and read more up about that. So it's very exciting that we've just released that. Another point of note is to highlight the JavaScript API for embedding Spotfire web applications. It's a Mashup API, so you can embed multiple Spotfire pages in web pages, and it's all linked up together. So this shows an example on the right-hand side of a Mashup application. So if you click and mark in the top visualization, then all the bottom visualizations update. But yes, it's all nicely and neatly contained within a web application, and we've got bi-directional interaction, and it just works. Just to also just make you aware, don't forget, I'm not going to focus on it today, but don't forget the JSViz extension. Again, you can Google that and go on the Tibco community. We've got information on that. We can implement JavaScript visuals inside Spotfire. Okay, so I'm now going to move on to alerting in Spotfire. This is an example of a tool that we've developed in response to customers' needs using the Spotfire API, and it's to show how we allow customized and configurable alerting within Spotfire. I've got some simple use cases here. So, you want to be alerted when some data value goes over a limit, or when something changes in your data. We can alert via email or mobile, via SMS. We've got all sorts of methods. We've got different methods of notifications and configuration of the alert. So we've developed a tool inside Spotfire that allows you to set up any number of alerts against an existing Spotfire file. And those alerts are registered to that Spotfire file, and each alert is configured with rules that define the frequency and the granularity of notifications. And they define the conditions necessary to trigger the notification. And once that configuration is set up, then it's used by an automation services task that we have also delivered for this particular piece of functionality. I mentioned rules in the previous slide, so I'm not going to go over each of these, but it's just to let you know that there's these different types of rules that you can configure against an existing analysis. They should be relatively self-explanatory, but we can have thresholds, so if something changes over a value, changing over time. There is return from an IronPython, or even a data function from an R script or a Terra script. And we've also got different mechanisms for notifications, so we can notify all recipients, or we can use personalized information links. So you could use that for row-based and role-based data. So you could just retrieve data for one specific user or a group of users and alert those users based on the data that is relevant to them, or even the data that only they are allowed to see. And we also have a mechanism for notifying email and also IronPython scripts. So the IronPython is extensible and can be used to use any kind of notification that you wish. So actually, let me just talk very briefly about the architecture, and then I'll go into the demo. It's deployed to the Spotfire server as an extension. We store the alert settings in a single database table, and the configuration architecture is nice and flexible. So we are really excited to be working with many customers in this area, and to enhance the tool all the time. So the nice thing about that configuration architecture is we can release new features without requiring database design changes or anything like that, because it's such a flexible design with the way that the alerts are configured. We also store logs and history in a database table. Okay, so without further ado, let me switch to the demo. That's the bit I always like best. So I've got this existing Spotfire analysis, and you'll notice in this Tools menu, we have an existing option here for alert monitoring. So if I click on this button here, I am then able to configure an alert within Spotfire. The tool is configured via licenses, so you can grant it to just individual users or individual user groups, so you can give permissions to individual users to work with this. So the first thing I'm going to do is set up the global alert configuration itself. I'm using a pre-configured alert just for speed. So you'll notice we've got an email template here. We've got a subject and message header. So this is applied at the beginning of every alert notification. And you'll also see that we've got some substitution variables. So if we put these into the email text, then they will be substituted at the time that the alert is run with either variables or data from the configuration or information from the Spotfire data. So that's just to show you it's nice and extensible in that way. On a footer, and also we can specify alerting frequency. So the idea is that you run this tool, the alerting task in automation services, as often as you wish to check for the alert condition, and then you can modify how frequently the alert will actually be sent out. So you could check every few minutes, but only alert once a week, for example, and then we can set what the earliest alert date for that is, maybe a week in advance or something like that. So you can configure that there. Then we come on to rule configuration. So here's where I said there are these different types of rules. So we've produced a user interface where you can choose, you just give the rule a name, and you can choose any one of the existing visualizations, and threshold column. If it's a cross table, you might have lots of different columns. And you can also choose a threshold. I'm going to choose 6 million. And also trigger if any value exceeds the threshold. Now, I'm not going to save that because this is, again, just for demo purposes. But once that's saved, It then appears in this grid, and you can have as many rules as you like in this, and that allows you to really target the alert, so it's highly specific to that user, so or that use case, so you don't unnecessarily spam users with unnecessary emails where your selection criteria are too wide or they're too narrow. So we can build up a rules engine here, a simple rules engine that will only alert if any rule or if all rules match, and again that's configurable. Once we've set up each rule, we can have a message for each of that rule, and you'll notice also here that there are substitution variables. So I can add in the data from the alert, or I can also add in visuals. I can add in visuals by clicking this box and just choosing the visual that I want, and we get a preview there, so that can go into here. And finally, we need to set up the recipient configuration. We can browse in for a list of recipients that we want to send globally, or we can iterate over a list of recipients and retrieve data specifically for them. Finally, we also have notification methods. So the default mechanism is via email, but we can also use IronPython, and it's designed to pass in a number of things into an IronPython script so that you can see who's see the detail, who the alert's intended for, the email addresses, username, phone number, all those kind of things. So you could use that for SMS notification. Okay, so now that I've demonstrated the setup of the tool, I am going to run it in automation services. We have a simple alerting task. I pre-configured one here that's just got information about the SMTP server, so if I run the email server, so if I execute this locally, we should see the alert conditions being met and an email notification coming in. So if I now click on this inbox, you'll see that we've got this email notification just come in, and it's been generated from the DXP and has a link to the analysis in the library, along with detailed information about the conditions to cause the alert and a sample visualization that we've included in that. So that concludes the demo of the Spotfire alerting tool, and I am now going